something nice about this too, but listen to this. When it's polyphonic.
Maybe you also noticed how I was panning it around. And that's also, that hints at another topic that has kept me busy for basically forever since I started doing electronics. And that topic is spatialization, which is really important for me. Because for me, music is a lot about raising awareness of what's around us. And I mean that literally in the case of spatialized sound and by extension music. So apart from my guitar work, one of the very early sound-related projects that I ever did was the so-called Topophonien for Sabine Schäfer. I'm going to show you some of this before I come back to guitars. So in the early 90s, most spatialization systems were confined to academic institutions. They were also largely only semi-automatic at best. So what I built for her back then was one of the first spatializers that had precise MIDI control. And at the time that meant to do it in a hybrid fashion. You had to do the signal in analog, so you need lots of VCAs and control all of them by computers through DA converters. And yeah, you can see the 3 design iterations here with increasing numbers of output channels and better quality. Later, things became easier. You could do things with DSPs and digital, and then we had 40 output channels. And today, of course, you just buy a laptop and a rack of sound cards and can have any number of channels you might need. That's one installation we did with kind of a sculptural approach to spatialization, where sounds were falling from the ceiling, but also panned around the mid-center platform. And yeah, I've kept doing these kind of projects for many, many years. The other thing, the other important topic that has followed me throughout the years, which I want to talk a bit about before I come back to the guitar, is that of sensors. So in the mid-90s, I was lucky enough to do an internship at Stein in Amsterdam. And their mission has always been to bring electronic music on stage, which wasn't the norm back then. But also, they try to conceive of alternative interfaces to the omnipresent piano-derived keyboard. So the way to do this, of course, is sensors, where you detect things like pressure and bending and tilt, distance, acceleration, and so on. And here's a picture of probably their most famous instrument. It's the Hand by their founder, Michel Weisfish. Now sadly Stein doesn't exist anymore, and I'm kind of trying to hold up a candle by supporting some of the musicians that had their instruments made there. In particular, this reincarnation of the Hands for singer-composer Alex Novitz. Very similar layout and control mechanism, but it's wireless now and has a 3D printed enclosure. And here's a few more of these Stein controllers that I maintained over the years and modified. Here's the trombone-propelled electronics by Nick Collins, the Meta trumpet by Jonathan Impett, Peter Cusack has a hybrid guitar, and so on. So these are the kind of projects I also kept doing after I moved to Berlin in the late 90s. So I'm just going to show you a few to give you an idea of the range of projects I do. Not go too much into detail, but of course you can always approach me afterwards if you have detailed questions. So first, here's some more controllers. This here is a 3D modulation wheel, so you can rotate it like a normal modulation wheel, but you can also tilt it to the side and push down on it. For Robin Hayward, I did the tuning vine, which is based on RFID tags and is used for just intonation applications. And to the right is that's actually used to be a breath controller by Yamaha, the WX breath controller. And together with musician Julian Simon, we modeled it a bit and put in pressure sensors and changed the whole way the instrument is held, because he felt uncomfortable with the way the original controller was laid out. Next, I'm going to show a few hybrid designs. By hybrid, I mean instruments where the musician plays an acoustic instrument, but also wants to further process the sound through effect pedals or laptop processing, whatever. And then they realize, I don't want to go from my instrument to the faders or foot pedals or whatever. I want to have the controls over this electronic part of my performance. I want to have that close to the instrument. So here's an example of that. That's the controller I built for Axel Dörner. So yeah, you can see some. It's really just it's not very super fancy. It's just some sliders and knobs and buttons. But it's way more convenient to have that right with your instrument and don't interrupt your musical flow. There's two more of these in a similar vein. A hybrid sax for Frank Rakowski, and that's a valve sensor that I fitted on Robin Hayward's tuba. Sometimes there's also kind of unconventional instruments, like in this case a bike. And sometimes it's more familiar with just a little twist. So I built this motor fader for Beast in Birmingham, who are also into spatialization, by the way. This design was really just about an optimized compact form factor and high precision and high speed. And sometimes I even do analog. So I'm currently revisiting Stein's Crackle synth for Mars and Collage and adding some extra features to it. Apart from instruments, I also get a lot of requests for installations. Some interactive sound installations, media art, so here's some examples of that. So in hip hop, there's one deck that picks up sound from the vinyl, and I send it to the other deck, and that deck has some motors on it, and it draws with a pencil and plays with a stylus on a piece of paper that's rotated. Here's a project where we're spinning ping pong balls with patterns on them. G Player answers the pressing question, what's the sound of a gigantic turntable needle when you drag it over Earth's topography? Let's see. It sounds like that. subway tunnel alongside what's on the surface directly above as we ride along in that subway. In pneumatic sound field, we had 128 air valves, and they were all controlled with central precision to create an eerie, spatialized sound experience. I'm involved in the project Klimaanlage. It's a sonorization project that turns climate data into sound through electroacoustic instruments that were specifically made for this. For example, the string instrument you see over there, which has some driver coils, so we can send sound into the strings and then they vibrate and we pick that up again. Next one, Yuna unit. That's sort of an anthill robot made from 100 interconnected servos. Sadly, I don't have a video of that because it would look really creepy. Then we have Thoughts Go By Air. That was a series of balloons with propellers, and they were kind of talking to each other and moving around in space. And something guitar related. Some hacked tuner pedals that spell out wisdoms.